Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to speak today about what the Bureau is doing to help meet the nation's renewable energy objectives. In March of this year, President Obama called for an all-of-the-above energy strategy, and that strategy included energy efficiency measures, energy conservation, and the drive to develop additional conventional and renewable energy resources. So the goal of increasing the contribution from domestic renewable energy sources is what we're speaking about today. Let's see if I can do this here. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, we're a new bureau. We're made up of, we used to be the Bureau of Land Management and the USGS way back until 1984. From 1984 until about 2010 or 2011, we were the Minerals Management Service. We then became the Bureau of Ocean Energy Regulation and Enforcement, and were reorganized in October of 2011 into two agencies, or three agencies actually. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, and as you see, we're responsible for managing the development of offshore, both conventional and renewable energy resources on the outer continental shelf, which is 3 miles out offshore and beyond, except offshore Texas, the east coast of Texas, and Texas and the east coast of Florida, where it's about 10 miles offshore. So our responsibility is to balance economic development, energy independence, and environmental protection. The other parts of the agency that we were once part of are the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement. That is the agency now that is responsible for inspection and enforcement responsibilities with respect to conventional energy. And the Office of Natural Resource Revenue, which used to be Minerals Revenue Service, and that's the agency that's responsible for collecting and dispersing royalties, rentals, and other funds from the development of the nation's energy and mineral resources on federal lands. So in terms of renewable energy, our responsibility is to, as you'll see a little bit later, is to issue leases and manage the development of wind energy, to issue leases and manage site assessment activities for marine hydrokinetic activities, which is wave and current activities, and to issue rights-of-ways for the transmission of power that is generated from renewable energy as that crosses federal lands offshore. So as I said, we're better known for our responsibility for managing exploration and development of the nation's offshore oil and gas. The responsibility for renewable energy came to us in 2005 with the Energy Policy Act. So you see that our mandates with respect to the Energy Policy Act are to ensure safety, environmental protection, coordination, fair return, revenue sharing with states. What I'm mostly going to talk about is the coordination function. So we've taken a number of important steps to ensure the safe and efficient and effective offshore development. A critical tool that we've used are these renewable energy, state, federal renewable energy task forces. We now have 12 of these task forces along the eastern seaboard, and we have one in Oregon and one in Hawaii. Those are the ones I'm most familiar with. So the purpose of these task forces is to help facilitate coordination among federal, state, and tribal government stakeholders, and through those stakeholders to other stakeholders who are in fact interested or identify themselves as stakeholders. I think that we all recognize that for any energy activity, including renewable energy, of course, and you're going to hear from people who have a lot of experience with it. It's a new experience for us, but you'll hear from others today about this. But it's the responsibility for coordination is a heavy responsibility and a very important responsibility. We found that and I think this is universal through government, the coordination at the very early stages of planning activities and going through the leasing process and environmental analysis process is really important. It's critical to carrying out our responsibility in a thoughtful, deliberative, and transparent way. And that's a major commitment throughout the Department of Interior. We have a number of agreements. They're not really shown here, but we have a number of agreements with other federal agencies, memoranda of understanding, memoranda of agreement, other kinds of vehicles. And those agencies with whom we have those agreements are the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the EPA, the Department of Energy, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and finally U.S. Coast Guard. So we have these agreements, and the agreements are designed to ensure close cooperation between these various agencies and that we share both information and resources. In addition to that, that we work to align our regulatory responsibilities to achieve efficiencies, and those are efficiencies for the agencies and as well as predictability for the regulated entities, so those folks who are applying for permission to develop these resources. So these are, just in case you're interested, these are the 12 intergovernmental task forces that we have. The older ones are the ones that are in the Atlantic. That's where we started the program with offshore wind. I did want to tell you about our environmental studies program and our and Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement's technology and assessment research program. Both of those contribute to our information and the information that's available to anybody, both developers and states and local governments and the rest of the federal regulatory community. The environmental studies program, for which the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management is responsible, supports our environmental analysis and our decision making. This program is funded at about $34 million a year, and that includes both conventional energy and renewable energy projects. I have a list of ongoing and completed studies for renewable energy that I could get Bryden. I'm sorry I wasn't able to make copies of that for you before I left, but you might be interested in those. In addition to that, and I know that you're all going to have access to these presentations, I've given you the website for it. So there's it's a great resource to look at what it is that we've done in the area of science to support our decisions. So as I said, the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement is our sister agency, and it has this technology research program. They focus on operational safety and pollution prevention, and they have done a surprising number of studies that help support decisions on wind energy. Their focus really is to ensure safety. So they're now looking, I believe it is, at worker safety with respect to offshore wind developments. They have looked at design criteria, and they are also looking at all of those design issues and how it is that our regulatory, or the BSEE's regulatory responsibilities needs to be changed or augmented in order to address the kinds of issues that come up with relative to the designs of offshore, primarily right now offshore wind farms, although they have done a little bit on marine hydrokinetics. I'm going to give you just a really quick picture of what's going on. So for OCS wind energy, and again, OCS is 3 miles to about 200 miles offshore to the edge of the exclusive economic zone. So we have full responsibility for everything from planning, leasing, the approval of operations plan, construction and operations plans, the oversight of those operations, although that will eventually go to our sister agency, BSEE, and decommissioning. The wind resources, unfortunately, Hawaii's not here. Hawaii also has substantial wind resources. So what you see here is the blue and the red are the most intensive wind resources available. Everything from pink on through purple, red, and blue are good through superb. So there are a lot of resources, and you can see off the East Coast why it's so very interesting to those East Coast states that are now highly dependent on fossil fuels and imports for power. So there's been a big initiative off the Atlantic coast. Just some information about where they are today with respect to what's happening, that we have actually issued, this was quite a little bit ago, the Cape Wind lease off Cape Cod in Massachusetts. Commercial wind projects are now being proposed, and we will probably be having lease sales for commercial leases off the coast of, off the Atlantic coast. There's technology testing off Georgia and research and commercial interest off the west coast in Hawaii. We've seen it off, a little bit off California, off Oregon, and off Hawaii. We don't have any actual project proposals in yet. For marine hydrokinetic energy, it's more complicated, more agencies involved, and we're working very hard on simplifying this. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management has responsibility for leasing and site assessment activities, and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission has responsibility for issuing licenses. So those licenses are all of the operations responsibilities and decommissioning of those activities offshore, at which time the leases themselves come back to us for disposition and release. The wave energy resources are considerable, certainly considerable off Alaska, but it's not, nobody's really shown much interest yet in that, but certainly offshore California, Oregon, and Washington, and offshore Hawaii, although offshore Hawaii would probably be limited to state waters. And what's happening there is that we're working with Oregon and Hawaii. Oregon, there seems to be, there's a big initiative for commercial wave off Oregon, so we may see that first. They have just, in the development of technologies, the technologies continue to morph, so it turns out that while they thought the shallower water was the better place to be, they're now saying that the deeper water is the better place to be, and somewhere off Hawaii, given the bathymetry off Hawaii, around 7 miles might be an optimal place to be located. So that's becoming, getting closer to being something that's real. Ocean current, there's a Florida Atlantic University has a testing lease or an interim lease there to do some research. We also have responsibility, as I said, for transmission. You may or may not have heard this, but recently a multi-phase project, this Google project, the Backbone project, which is an interesting project of a backbone of electric cables between Virginia and New York, New Jersey. And the purpose of that is to collect the energy that will be developed from wind farms that are proposed or likely to happen in that area and transport that electricity. There's an individual project off Rhode Island at Block Island, and off Hawaii, we're working with Hawaii on a prospective inter-island cable that would possibly take electricity or power from the outer islands or even offshore, possibly to the main demand center, which is on Oahu. So I'll come to the end. That's just a really quick overview. I have included, and it'll be in what you see that's posted or distributed, some examples, some more concrete examples of what's happening with the renewable energy task forces as extra slides for this. So I just wanted to emphasize that we're working to provide environmentally appropriate access to the OCS for renewable energy resources through planning and science. The interagency task forces are key, as I said, to identifying these opportunities and to address and resolve multiple use conflicts. The exchange of information has allowed us to design wind energy areas off the Atlantic coast, and those are areas that we will be offering for competitive leasing. And also to start talking about the similar opportunities and opportunity areas offshore Oregon. When we're working on that with the state of Oregon and through the Oregon BOEM OCS Interagency Task Force, Renewable Energy Task Force. So we feel that the approach that we're taking with the task forces, the clear consideration of multiple use conflicts, along with our agreements with other federal agencies and the information gathering efforts that we have through our environmental studies program and through the technology assessment program that Bessie has, that will improve the opportunity for offshore renewable energy to add to the nation's energy portfolio. I want to thank you all very much, and we'll be happy to take questions when we get to that part.